There is nothing hard about a loop. You use them every single day. You wake up in the same bed each morning. That's a loop. You can go to work or college and then came back home. That's a loop. Consider any sequence of events in your life that are repeated and you'll see an example of a loop. For example, buses in transit systems tend to be an example of a loop where the bus goes around and around. Loops are the driving force of programming languages. They are your best buddy when you want to execute a piece of code a certain number of times. These spells come in handy. A loop is a block of code that will repeat over and over again until the desired process is complete. When programmers write code, loops allow them to shorten what could be hundreds of lines of code to just a few. This allows them to write the code once and repeat it as many times as needed, making, making it more likely for the program to run as expected. Loops make code more manageable and organized. As we learn more about programming and writing complex programs, loops will be an important element to understand and use. Depending on situations, different loops are used for different times. Well, PHP comes under the same picture. Let's find out in the next section. The for loop in the PHP script runs a block of code multiple times repeatedly. For loops, for loops will repeat a block of code a set number of times. The reason they are called for loops is that you can tell your program for how many times you want it to repeat the code. You can think about for loops as telling your program, repeat this for 17 times or repeat this for 5 times. In PHP, for loop to function properly, you must keep the correct syntax in mind. For initialization, condition, increment, code to be executed. Let's have a hands on the parameter of the for loop. Initialization specifies the start value. Condition checks the specified condition with every loop. If it is true, the loop continues. If it proves false, the loop stops. Increment changes the value of the iterator with every loop. It might become clearer if you analyze an example. You will notice that the code below prints out the numbers from 0 to 10. The example above defines a loop that starts with $x equals 0. The loop will continue until $x is less than or equal to 10. The variable $x will increase by 1 each time the loop runs. The while loop in PHP has two components. One is a condition and the other is the code to be executed. It executes the given code until the specified condition is true. Following is the syntax of the while loop in PHP. Here, if the condition becomes false inside the loop, then also the loop continues to execute till the next time the condition is checked. It might become clearer if you analyze the example below. Have a look at the image above to have a more clear idea of the code. Let's break down the example. First, we have a variable with a numerical value of 1. This variable will be a counter in the loop and allow us to stop it. The expression is a conditional evaluation that checks if the value of $i is less than 4. Next, we echo the number to keep things simple. Then we increment a counter with a $I plus plus. This is the same as $I equals I plus 1. So $I will effectively increment each time the loop runs until it becomes 3. The do-while loop is very similar to the while loop. The only difference between these two loops is the while loop first checks the condition and then executes the block of code. But the while loop first executes the block of code then checks the condition. Therefore, the do while executes the block of code at least once because it checks the condition after executing the block of code. To put it simply, a do while loop is an upside while loop. Below is the syntax for the same. The code we want to execute if the while expression is true is placed within the do execution block. It will always execute at least once, even if the while expression is false. We must also remember to terminate the do while loop statement with a semicolon. It might be clearer if you analyze the example below. But how does this go in such a good flow? Relax, let's understand. From the example, first the variable $A is set to 0. Then the block of code is executed once. Then the block of code is executed while $A is larger than 0. It won't loop because $A is 0. Can you relate something here? Well, if you use the while loop in this example, it would not execute the code inside because the condition is false. Which of the loops do we use for which occasion? It really depends on the code we are working with at that time. As a general rule of thumb, we can use these loops for the following situations. A while loop is used when we don't know explicitly how many times the loop should run. A do-while loop is used when we don't know explicitly how many times the loop should run and if we want the code to execute at least once. That's all.